Let's do a quick recap first. Yesterday we spoke about what exactly is continuous delivery and what is a continuous deployment. Okay. Now we do have an application which we have built and we got an artifact created. Okay. This artifact needs to be deployed. Hence we have understood what exactly. Guys, can you put yourself on mute? So we need to go and deploy this application on Azure Cloud. I'm just getting my own voice. Okay. Am I audible to you all?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, so I was saying that the application which we have built, that application needs to be deployed. Now, before we go and deploy that application, because I'll be deploying this application on Azure Cloud. Okay, so this is the account, Azure Cloud, where we will be deploying the application on portal.azure.com. Okay, so the first question arises, how do I connect? So this Azure Cloud is one application and the other one is Azure DevOps. These are two different applications. Even though it belongs to Microsoft family, that is totally fine. But if you see this way, these are two different applications. How do I connect this application, Azure DevOps with Azure Cloud, so that it can do the authorization, authentication, and it can connect to my resources on cloud and deploy my application. So this can be only possible using a method called service connection. But before you go and understand service connection, you need to understand Azure Active Directory. Why do you need to understand Azure Active Directory? The reason is because the authentication and authorization will happen with the help of Azure Active Directory. All your authentication and authorization, everything happens through Azure Active Directory. If you see, I'm logged in with this email ID. Even this email ID is registered with Azure Active Directory, and I got global administrator permission, then I was able to log into this particular account. Okay, now just let's have a look on Azure Active Directory, Azure AD to be very specific. Now when you go into your Azure AD, this is what you see. I'll see only one user who is currently logged in. Okay, there are multiple users. One user who is currently logged in. This is the user which I'm currently logged in as. Let me just remove this guest user for now. So this is a user guest, so just remove it for now. Service connection error. Okay, it's okay. So before we jump on to Azure Active Directory and start creating service connection, we need to understand couple of things. How exactly the authentication and everything happens on Azure AD and how a service connection will be created. So let's think of this as your Azure Cloud. Just think of this as your Azure Cloud. And then think of this as your Azure AD. And now think of this as a subscription, your Azure subscription, the one which we created. Inside this subscription, you got your resource group created. Inside this subscription, just imagine you have your resource group created. Inside this resource group, you got couple of resources. What could be the resource? The resource could be, just imagine this is a VM, Azure VM. The other resources which you have created, imagine that is AKS clusters. So you can have a number of resources inside your resource group depending upon your requirement. Okay, this is your current setup. Just imagine you have your subscription, you got your resource group. Inside the resource group, you got couple of resources which is got created. Now I am sitting somewhere over here. I'm in cloud. I'm in cloud somewhere over here. So from internet, now I want to access this resource. I want to access this resources. How do I access? First way. So how do I access? That is the question. One way is using user ID and password. That is what I did over here, correct? I have logged in as a user ID and a password. So I'll be connecting to my resources using user ID and password. So all my resources will be visible over here. I can connect to that resources using user ID and passwords. And this is my subscription. This is my subscription and I'll be logging in using my user ID and password. Okay. So what I'll do, I'll create users over here. In Azure AD, I'll create user 1, user 2, user 3, depending upon my requirement. Okay, and I'll give them all required permissions. So this user, using this method, I'll be able to connect to this Azure AD. So using Azure AD, I'll be authenticated first on Azure AD. That what all required permissions I have. Once I'm authenticated, then I'll be able to, this user will be able to connect to your subscription. Now again, there's a condition over here. What kind of authorization have you got? Like what kind of permissions you have? Can you access this subscription? If you're able to access, can you access this resource group? If you're able to access resource group, can you access Azure VM? This is the place where your RBAC comes in picture. Role-based access control. RBAC. So based on your role, the required permissions will be given to you. RBAC, role-based access control. So based on your permissions, this should be connecting to your RBAC. Okay, so this is a traditional method through which you will be able to log in. First, you will create a user on Azure Active Directory. You will give the required permissions to that user. Okay, so once the user is created on Azure AD, the user will be authenticated to log into Azure AD. He'll be able to log into Azure AD. Okay, now you will give permission, you will give the required permission, the authorization to this user that what all resources he can access. So we got RBAC. RBAC is basically role-based access control. So based on your role, so what we say in DevOps, give least privileges. Even though if the person wants some access, don't give him owner or administrative access. Give him least privilege based on his role. If he's a developer, give him developer related access. If he's a tester, give him tester related access. So that is the criteria we need to follow. So role-based access control is basically based on your role, you will be providing the required permissions to the users. So based on the role, you will be giving the permission, and now the user will be able to access the resources. At the subscription level, you can give permission. You can also give permission at the resource group level, guys. Also, you can go more granular, and you can also give permission at the resource level. you can go more granular, and if you want to be very specific while giving the permissions, you can do it. Now this is one way of connecting to your Azure cloud services. This is the way which I'm following right now. If you see, I'm logged in using a user ID and password. Okay. Now the other way is I want to connect using my Azure DevOps. Now my pipeline will connect basically. I'm not connecting. My pipeline will connect. Okay. So this is one way of authentication and authorization. A typical user creation and authorization given. The other way is there's one more way through which you can connect. That is nothing but this method is called as service principal method. Now in this method, you will not have user ID or password. In this method, you will have access keys, access ID and secret. You can have certificates also over here. In place of secret, if you want to have certificates to be more secure, even that is possible. Okay. So this is other method wherein you will not have some this typical user created, but you will have some sort of access key created, an access certificate is secret created. Using this, you will be able to authenticate yourself on Azure AD. Once you're authenticated, you can the same thing. You will be authorized with this RBAC, and based on the kind of authorization has been given to you, you will be able to access the required resources. Based on authorization, you'll be able to access the authorized resources. Now, why do we use this method of service principal? Now, with user, a big task comes in picture, that user management, role management. Plus, you need to make sure that the user leaves. Then you need to make sure the user is deleted. You need to give least privileges to the user. Now, in case of service principal, plus there will be a password given to the user. Okay. Now imagine you have a custom application wherein you need to connect that custom application with some of the Azure resources. Passing user ID and password is not suggested by Microsoft. So it's better they suggest use this service principal method wherein you can pass on the access key and the access certificate or secret to make things more secure. Okay. So there are multiple heads up when you're creating a user management and things comes in picture, and it's kind of a hectic task. Okay. Wherein this service principal, if you have any such requirement wherein you want to have a custom application connected to Azure resources, or if you want to connect to some third-party application such as Azure DevOps. Azure DevOps is also a third-party application for you guys, correct? So service principal is the recommended approach what Microsoft suggests. Okay. Service principal is the recommended approach what Microsoft is suggesting if you want to connect to any third-party application. Azure DevOps is a third-party application, guys, and not just Azure DevOps, there are other applications if you want to connect to, then service principal is the method which they suggest. So we'll be creating service connection. So service connection is basically, if you want, it's a bridge between your Azure DevOps and Azure Cloud. Service connection will help you authenticate and authorize your connection. Post that, you'll be able to deploy and access resources on Azure Cloud. So we'll be creating, so by both the methods, a service connection can be created. It's just not by just service principal. The service connection can be created even with user ID and password, and even with this service principal method. But the one which Microsoft suggests that you should always use service principal method if you want to create any sort of connection. Okay, but we'll see both. We'll see the service principal method first. The second we'll see the user ID method also. Okay, so this is how these are the two ways how you can get yourself authenticated and authorized on Azure Active Directory. Are we good? Any confusion, any doubt? Anyone? Let me log into a different account. Anyone, guys? Any questions? Any doubt?
Hi. I don't have a question about this, but I have a question about the pipeline. So I guess I don't know if you want me to ask that now or when we get back to that.
Sure, no problem. We'll see at the end. We'll see.
Okay, thanks.
No problem. Anyone else regarding? So we'll go and see how exactly this Azure Active Directory works, guys. So we'll go and create a user also. We'll create a service principal also, and we'll see how exactly it works. Okay. Now let me go to account.
I may know this is the single sign-off authentication, Azure Active Directory authentication, Azure authentication.
Single sign-on authentication is a different method. Those are authentication method. What you're talking about? Putting more security. If you're putting single sign-on authentication like SSO and all these, if you're putting, that's a different. Those are related to your authentication security. Okay. As if now we are not talking about anything as such. We are talking
Sure.
about how do we connect your third-party application with Azure Cloud
Pipeline.
services. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, single sign-on, MFA, that's multi-factor authentication. All these are additional layer of securities which you can put. That is mostly put together for users like you and me when we log into Azure resources. So this is more for us. I am.
Okay.
Give me
Thank you.
one quick minute. Again and again going to a different account right now. Give me one quick minute, guys. Okay, so basically I want to log in with a different subscription and it is taking me back to my old subscription. Let me just quickly log into the different subscription. Okay, so I'm logged in successfully. So two ways. We'll see through the user way also. But the first way is we'll see this service principal route. How exactly this using this route, because this is the recommended approach by Microsoft. So we'll follow this method first, guys, and then I'll show you this method also. Okay, so both the ways, eventually the end goal is to create service connection, and these are the two ways through which we can create service connection in reality. Okay, so let's go and see the first way. Am I logged in? Okay, I'm logged into the account. Very good. Now let's go to your Azure DevOps. This is the account which you want to log in. So in order to create a service connection, you need to go to project settings, come to pipeline section. In the pipeline section, there's an option called service connection. There's no connection as of now in my account, if you see. So I'll just click on create service connection. Now, as I said, in Azure Cloud, there were two methods when we were doing cloud section. There are two ways you can create resources. One way is Azure Classic. The other way is Azure Resource Manager. Azure Classic is old and sooner it will be obsolete. Azure Resource Manager is the new way. Okay, so this is the method we have to select. hit next. So there are multiple options: service principal, automatic creation, service principal, manual creation, manage identity, publish profile. So we'll stick with service principal manual for now. I'll show you the automatic way later. For now, let's stick with manual. Let's go and create the service principal manual. So click next. There are multiple things that it is asking for: subscription ID, subscription name, principal ID, principal key, tenant ID, and there are multiple things. So let's go and create all this first. Okay, let's go back to your Azure AD. Let's go to Azure Active Directory. Okay, once you're there in the Azure Active Directory, you need to create a service principal. So in order to create a service principal, there is a term called app registration over here. Don't get confused by app registration, the naming. You'll have to go inside this app registration, which is there inside manage app registration. Click on new registration and give a name to your service principal. I name it as Valaxy -DevSecOps. Okay. Supported account type. So we are using a single tenant. Tenant is more like a organization, guys. If you have multiple organization, multiple tenants will be created. In my case, I just have one tenant for my organization. That's it. So if you have multiple tenant, you can select the second option. Okay. Redirect URI, this is completely optional for us. This is basically used if you have any custom application. In your custom application, if you're using this service principal method and you want to redirect once the user login, if you want to redirect your page to some landing page or such, then you will have this URL added over here. Okay, so this is not for us. I'll just click on register. So we got this created. We have this service principal created. So this part is done. We have created the service principal. I'll get the access ID created. I'll not generate the secret for now. I'll generate the secret later. But can we connect to the subscription? So this is the first part you have done. Now this service principal which you have created, you need to give access at the subscription level. What you need to give? You need to give access at the subscription level. That's the second thing. Come back to your home directory, go to subscription, look for subscription at the top. Now this is, I'm talking about RBAC. Okay, we'll go inside your subscription. This is the option over here, access control. Click on access control. You see there's an option role assignment. This is the place where you can give RBAC access, role assignments. There's so many roles created automatically. Okay, now you can give the required role. You can click on this add role assignments. Now there are different types of role based on what the person is. If a person is a developer, tester, QA, administrator, depending upon that, there are different kind of roles you can give. See, there are so many roles. If the person is just using the Kubernetes cluster, he is a contributor to your cluster and things like that. So based on the role, you can give him the specific role. Okay, but this is more, this role which I'm talking about, this is more for your pipeline. So a pipeline should have a extended privilege, because your pipeline will be connecting to some specific resources. He will be deploying your changes to those specific resources. So your pipeline should have a good privilege in order to do all this. Okay, but yeah, you can still define what kind of privileges you want. Always follow the least privilege option. Now there are three types of roles you see: owner, contributor, and reader. These are some very simple, straightforward role. Owner is basically, we can have access to all the resources. On top of it, this person can even assign resources to others. If you are the owner, you can have all the privileges. You can do everything on Azure cloud. Plus on top of it, if you want to assign roles to someone else, you can do that. On the other hand, contributor will have full access to all the resources. The only thing is he cannot assign, this contributor person cannot assign roles to other person. Okay, so I think contributor is the safest which we can select. Reader, on the other hand, this is only will give you read only access. Okay, and there are others also, ACR delete, ACR pull, and if you want to create your own custom role, even that is possible, guys. Okay, so keep that in mind, and based on that, select the role. For me, as if now I'm selecting the contributor, I'm just giving the contributor access to my, and that is the least what you can give if you're creating a service connection, guys. So done. User group or service principal. So in my case, it's a service principal. I'll go and select the member. What is the name of the service principal? Valaxy DevSecOps, correct? So this is the service principal. Okay, there's a typo in DevSecOps. Okay, that's fine. I've selected this. Done. Review and assign. So what did we do? First, we created a service principal. Second, we have assigned a contributor role at my subscription level. Third, we'll go and create this service connection. We'll create the secret also. That is something we'll do later. For now, this is what we'll do. Done. If you see, I got this contributor created. Let me delete this roles, different roles. I don't want that. Okay, let's go to your service connection again. Let's create a service connection. What is the subscription ID? From where I'll get the subscription ID? I'll get it from my subscription itself. So I'm in the overview screen. Now this is my subscription ID, guys. So let's copy this, paste it over here. What is the subscription name? This is the name of my subscription, DevSecOps training. Copy this, put it over here. Principal ID. Principal ID, this is nothing but your service principal ID. So what you have to do, go back to your Azure AD, come to the app registration again, click over here. Now this application ID, what you see, this is your principal ID, guys. Copy this, put it over here. Now there are two ways you can authenticate yourself. One is principal key, that is something access key which I was talking about. The second is certificates. If you have a certificates, you can get yourself authenticated using public and private certificates also. Okay, for in my case, we'll be using key. So it is asking for your service principal key. So this key needs to be generated. I have not created this key as of now. So for generating this key, you have to come to the certificates and secret section. Over here, you can go and click on new client secret. You can give a name. This is for Valaxy DevSecOps. Okay. Now you can select the expiry, like this service connection I just want for 6 months, 180 days, and things like that. You can even have a custom date over here. For me, I just keep it for 9 months, 3 months. Add. Now if you see this, this is your secret ID and this is your value. So this is the value what we required. I'll just copy this value, put it over here. Now it is asking for tenant ID also. From where exactly we'll get this tenant ID? That is something we'll get it from overview screen itself. There is option of tenant ID. Just copy this tenant ID, come back. So all these keys are required when you're creating a service connection. Okay, done. Verify. Perfect. Verification succeeded. Now give it a name. whatever name you want to give. Now I'll just name it as Valaxy DevSecOps. Okay. Now I can allow permission to all my pipelines. So if any of my pipeline wants to use this service connection, they can use it. I'll just verify and save it. Perfect. Now if you see this is your service connection created. If you click on manage service connection roles over here, it will basically take you to your subscription and it will take you to this screen, Azure AD, not Azure AD. It will take you to this screen. And if you click on this part, manage service principal, it will take you to your service principal. Okay, so this is how a service connection can be created. Now, once your service connection is created, you can create your pipelines and you can start deploying your things using this service connection. Okay, so this is the route which we took right now. This is the route which we took. Now, many of you will say, how do I create things using this user ID and password? How do we create service connection using a user ID and password? Okay, let's go and see that. Anyone has any questions with this service connection thing which we did just now? Anyone, guys, any questions, any doubt? What is this service connection? How do we, because this is very important when you go and start working on reality. These are the things, service connection, service principles, which you will be creating a lot in order to connect to your external resources. No questions. Okay, let's take the different route now. Let's create a user and user ID and password and see how it works. Now, in my case, if you see closely, I'm logged in with same user right now in my Azure DevOps, and even on my cloud, I'm logged in with the same user. So this is not a big deal for me for creating a user ID and password service connection. Automatically, this will be created if I use the automatic method. If I go and use the automatic method, this will be created within no time. See, if I go and use this method of automatic, this will be created automatically. It will automatically fetch my subscription. I just have to select that subscription. That's it. I'm done. Okay. See this. It selected my subscription also. While I was talking, it selected the subscription. I just have to give the, if at the resource group level, if I want to connect, I can directly go and connect. But this is not the method I want to teach you. This is very easy. What if you're using a different email ID? You have a different login credential from your cloud. Because this person, this Mela DevOps, this person is a owner on both the places. On your Azure DevOps also, this person is a owner. On your Azure Cloud also, this person is a owner. So what I'll do, I'll use a different account, a different email ID altogether. Just to give you a glimpse how exactly things work if you're using a different email ID, how you can create a service connection. Just to give you that glimpse, I'll be using a different account. Okay. So Prashant, we are creating service connection because we have built pipeline. Now, in order to deploy your changes on cloud, okay, you need to have this service connection created. Service connection is nothing but it's a bridge between your Azure DevOps and Azure Cloud. Using service connection, you'll be able to authenticate and authorize yourself to deploy your changes on cloud. Okay. Using that method, you'll be able to authenticate yourself, and then your Azure DevOps pipelines will be able to connect to your cloud services. Okay, that is why we are creating. Okay, come back to, let me log into a different account. Let me open things in incognito mode. So why exactly I'm using a different account, guys? I'm using a different account just to give you a glimpse if I'm logged in using a different email ID. So let's log into a different account. Okay, this is a different email ID and a different account. Let me see if I'm able to log in. Okay, perfect. I'm logged into this account. Let's open any of this project. Let's go to project settings. Let me see if there's any service connection already created in this. Okay, perfect. No service connection. So this time I'm logged into a different account. This is the email ID. Okay, now we'll follow this route of creating the service connection. So firstly, I need to create a user on my Azure AD. So I'll be creating a user based on this email ID. Okay, based on this email ID, I'll creating a user. So let's go on Azure AD now. Now let's go to Azure Active Directory. Click on user. Okay, there are multiple ways you can create users. You can create a user which is internal user of your organization, or you can even create an external user. For me, it's an external user because it's a Gmail account. If I have my own domain registered, I can also create my own users, guys. But if I want to create this user as an internal user, even that is possible. Okay, but for now, to make things simple, I'll create a guest user. Okay, it's a one of the same thing, nothing different. It's just a guest user. You just need to go and accept the invite. That is the only thing you have to do. I'll name this user as Rohit Singh. The user email ID is test.rohitks at gmail.com. Rest everything remain, you can give as it is. Okay, now create invite. So this invitation has been sent to this user. Now you need to go and accept this invitation first. Okay, while we are waiting for the invitation, let's go and see if we have received the invitation. I think might have received it. Yes.rohitks@gmail. Perfect. Okay, if you see this, I got this invitation. So I just go and accept this invitation. This is the only extra step you need to do if you're using a guest user. Okay, so this is done. Let's go back to your Azure AD. So one part is done. You have the user created. You have accepted the invitation. Now you need to give this user access at the Azure AD level itself. You need to give the authentication access. Now this user has not been authenticated yet. This is just a user which has been added on Azure AD. Now this user will not be able to log into your cloud yet. Now in order to do that, you need to give this user access at the AD level first. So there are multiple things why Microsoft recommends service principal method. Now you will understand. Okay. Now you need to give this user access at the AD level. Okay. Now for doing that, go back to your Azure AD. Go back to your user. This is a user. Now give him a role. Now in the manage section, go to assign roles. This is I'm giving role at the AD level. Okay. Add roles. Did I select the right user? Wait. Which user did I select? No, Rohit Singh I need to select. Okay. Go back and go and assign roles and give him a required role. Now, whatever role you want to give, as of now, I'll give him a global administrative role. I'll tell you the reason why, because I need to create a service principal. So this is the administrator role we need to give, but you need to be very specific what this user is all about, what type of roles you want to give. Based on that, you should give roles. Okay. Now this role has been assigned to this user, Rohit Singh. Now this part is done. Now this person, Rohit Singh can log into your account and he can be authenticated to your Azure AD. But can this person access your resources? The answer is no. Why? Because he has been given a role only on AD right now. He can log in right now. He can log in and he can access your Azure AD. But can he go and log into your subscription? The answer is no. So what you have to do, you need to give RBAC role. No, this user needs to be added at this subscription level also. This user need to be added at the subscription level also. For doing that, go to your subscription. See, there are multiple layers of security we are placing for this user. Go to access control, go to role assignment. Now can I give him the same contributor role? Yeah, I can try to give him the same contributor role. Rohit Singh is visible over here. So next, review and assign. Now what did we do? Give contributor role to this user. So multiple things: created user, accepted the invite, assigned roles at the AD level, now assigned roles at the RBAC level. Now the thing is remaining, creating service connection. Okay, is it assigned? Assigned. Is the invitation accepted? Perfect. Close this. Close this. Now in order to create service connection, you can create directly from here. This is something we already saw. The other way is also you can create using your release pipeline. Like when you create a new pipeline, for example, you're trying to deploy something. Okay, when you come down, you see this subscription error. Okay, in the drop down, you can go and select your subscription. Now, do you see this is visible now? This subscription is visible in this account. This is only visible because you have given all the required permissions. If you have missed any of the permission, like suppose while you're creating, you miss the permission at the assigned AD level, or you miss the permission at the RBAC level, you will not see this in the drop down. This subscription will not be visible in the drop down. Keep that in mind. If the subscription is not visible, that means you made some mistake. Go back and see where the mistake is. If this is visible, that means everything is looking good right now. Okay, now let me click over here. Let's authorize. This is the, now this authorization will automatically go and create the service connection for you. So this is the email ID, correct? Let's put in the password. Okay, let's see. Oh, we got some error. Now the error is, if we read through the error, failed to set Azure permission role assignment, does not have the authorization to perform action. Okay, now this is because the service connection is failing. This is because this user has been given contributor access. And what did I say? A contributor cannot assign permissions. A contributor will not be able to assign permission. So if you want to create a service principal using user ID and password, you need to give owner permission. And that is something you will never get in your company. Owner permission. That's why service principal route is the best route which you can take if you want to create a service connection. Keep this in mind, because you will not have administrative access like the one way I'm giving to this Rohit Singh user. You will not have that administrative rights. So whenever you want to create a service connection, you need to reach out to your cloud admin and they will create that service connection for you, and they will just provide you with the service principal ID and service principal key. with all the required permissions. This owner permission will never be given to you. Just keep that in mind. Now with this owner permission, if I try to authorize now, I'll have no issues. Let's see. So the authorization is in place right now. Let's see if it is getting successful or not. So this is automatically going and creating that service connection for you guys. Perfect. Now if you see, it got created. Now do you see in available Azure service connection? You can see a service connection over here. Now if I go back to my project settings, go back to my service connection, do you see a service connection got created automatically? Now if you see this, it is creating service principal in the backdrop. If I go back to this, click on this page, have you guys noticed anything? Even though you're using a user ID and password, it took the service connection route. It basically took this route, created service principal, assigned roles, and able to access. This is the route which it took, even with the user ID and password. Now, if you go back to your subscription, you can see it might have assigned some roles also in your subscription level. Let's see if it has assigned some roles. Do you see there is a role, contributor role now has been assigned automatically. This is your service principal. Now this, that's why, like when you're creating a user ID service connection with user ID and password, then you need to have that person as owner access, because what is eventually happening, eventually in the backdrop, a service principal is getting created, and to a service principal you need to assign roles. So that is the reason why you need owner privileges over here. Understood why I gave global administrator and owner privileges? Because in the backdrop, even though if you're using a user ID and password, in the backdrop it will you create a service principal only. Because as I said at the very beginning, this is the approach what Microsoft recommends if you want to connect to any third party application. Okay, so even with user ID and password, it will go and create this part for you. So what you need to follow if you're creating a service principal, you need to follow directly this service principal method itself whenever you want to create any sort of service connection, or if you want to connect to any third party application. Make sense, guys? Why exactly I given owner access? And this is the two method using which you can create service connections. Again, service connection is nothing but it's a authentication and authorization bridge between your Azure DevOps and Azure Cloud. Once service connection is created, then only you can access all the resources on Azure Cloud, and you can deploy and manage your changes on Azure Cloud using your build and release pipelines. Are we clear with this? Any questions, any confusion? Please do let me know, because this is very important topic. Before you move on to the next deployment part, this is the very important topic which needs to be covered. And don't worry about this scribbling. I have a very good looking diagram already created, which I will share across with you guys. Any questions, any doubt? Okay, there's something in the chat. Okay, nothing. Prashant, are we good with service connection now? Any question? And
Yes, thanks.
no problem. If there's no question, I think there was some issues with the build pipeline, correct? So if there's no question, I can take up those things. Okay. So what was the issue with the build pipeline? I think it was Victoria, correct? Victoria? Guys, do you have any doubt or query? I think someone had some issues. Okay, no problem. So guys, that's it for today.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, Josh.
yeah. So we had a issue with the pipeline. Let me see
Hmm.
real quick.
So do you want to quickly share your screen and show others what exactly the issue was?
Sure.
We can try to. Let me give you presenter access. Now you can present. I'm just stopping the recording right now, guys. Okay.